I'd like to introduce Jannette Cheong, who is a poet, writer, designer and producer. She was born in London, and Jannette has worked nationally and internationally in higher education. In addition, for over 25 years, she has been involved in the organisation and facilitation of many international education and creative arts collaborations. The UNESCO ASPnet Arts and Culture for Peace initiative, Finding Peace with Ourselves and Our Planet, is the latest of the educational activities supported by Jannette and her colleagues. We invite you to participate in this project over the coming year, especially as you will have heard earlier that ASPnet will be celebrating 70 years of being in 2023. So over to you now, Jannette. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Anne. It's very difficult to follow Keiko-san, I must say. It's very touching to hear her story. Nonetheless, I am delighted to join this conference and to introduce and to launch the UNESCO ASPnet Arts and Culture for Peace initiative. First of all, very quickly, enormous thanks to Anne for taking the lead for the conference and her colleagues, and also in taking the initiative forward. She is going to be one of the lead national coordinators for the initiative. I'm grateful too to James and Julie-san and all of her colleagues, including Eric, for their support and guidance over the last year or so in developing this program. And of course, especially to Keiko-san for her story. I'm going to be speaking for about 20 minutes. I'll try and keep it as short as I can, leaving time for questions. And Anne and Mike, our hosts for this session, will handle any questions that you have. Please put them in the chat, and they will allow me to answer those towards the end. And there's no need for you to take notes because I will make this presentation available after this conference and also on the initiative website. So the conference is called Connecting for Peace. And this arts and culture initiative is all about such connections, past, present, and future. The initiative is also about reflection and action. This quote by Gandhi perhaps gives us a taste of both the reflection and action needed. Perhaps at first glance, it appears to be about protecting the world's forests, but it is also possibly a reflection on what we are doing to ourselves and as well as the forests, destroying and not maintaining. I think if we could keep this reflection and action concept in mind as we think about the new initiative and the part that you can play in it, that would be good throughout this presentation. We could also reflect that Gandhi said this during his lifetime. And if we think about the major historical events, one of which you've just heard about from Keiko-san, and other things that he witnessed in his lifetime, we might, given the present day challenges for our planet, consider that it is perhaps even more poignant today. Today, I'm going to talk about 3 Coventry pilot projects that were part of our bigger project Between the Stones. And I'll tell you a little bit about that. Why the UNESCO action areas are important to everybody, something about the arts and culture for peace activities, how schools and other educational establishments can participate, who does what, with whom, and with what effect. Next steps, perhaps, and leave time for your questions. So I'm going to move straight into the origins of this initiative, really, and the pilot projects began with a play that I wrote called Between the Stones. This is Kinoue Oshima performing Between the Stones at the world premiere at the Southbank Centre in London at the end of January in 2020. It's a inter-cultural collaboration between Japan and the West, I would say, more than just the UK, Japan and the West. It was one of Between the Stones play formed the umbrella, if you like, and running in parallel to the 3-year development of this play, we ran a whole series of education and outreach activities. They were with theatres, museums, schools, universities, the British Library, the Japanese Embassy. Lots of organisations participated in those educational and outreach activities. And the Coventry projects were part of this Japan-UK project, and it ran from 2018 to 2021. There were 3 peace projects by 5 UK primary schools, led by what we called the Coventry's young ambassadors. They were aged between, I was told at the time, between 8 and 10. You can find out a lot about the detail of these projects on the website, and there are lots of photographs and background material. And also later, Rebecca is going to be talking specifically about one of them, and I'll explain who Rebecca is in a moment. What arose out of this collaboration with these 5 schools was a project which was called Coventry Cities of Peace Schools Project. It combined art, culture, and education, and inspired, we hope, peace, reconciliation, and the sustainability of our planet. What was important for all the projects is that there was a lead person, and that person was one of the deputy head teachers in Coventry at one of the 5 schools, Rebecca Bolans. She's with us today, and you'll be seeing more of her later, and of course can join me answering questions later. Here's a brief outline of those 3 projects. The 3 projects were the Tanzaku Peace Poems, which led us to Peace Trees, Noh Theatre, which has led us to performing stories and songs for peace, and the Karisansui Garden, which has led us to Gardens for Peace. So all 3 projects have their roots in this initiative. And very quickly, just to run through some of the key elements from each of the projects. The first one, which resulted in an exhibition of peace trees, from tragic loss to peace. This we found was a relatively simple project for teachers and children to undertake in the classroom. It resulted in 180 Coventry young ambassadors creating their own individual peace poems. They're called Tanzaku when they're written on poem cards that are hung from wind chimes, furin, and the children made their own wind chimes from recycled materials. The efforts of all of those children who each made a wind chime were put together, and their efforts together added value and strength to the children's messages of peace and reconciliation by creating the Coventry Young Ambassadors peace trees. These particular peace trees were reusable, and that's because they designed them for an exhibition, and we used them for, in fact, 3 exhibitions in total. And those exhibitions gave us opportunities for sharing the children's learning, their peace messages. At these public events, there were 2 in Coventry, one to mark the 100th anniversary of Armistice Day at Coventry Cathedral. The second one was at the embassy, Japanese embassy in London, as part of our Between the Stones event. And the third one was back in Coventry at Coventry Cathedral as part of a massive Coventry Japan festival for arts. And there were lots of arts activities taking place, but the showing of the children's work was part of that. Here you can see their work exhibited. Moving on to the second project, which was the following year in 2019, the young ambassadors performed peace and reconciliation stories and songs. Again, that some of the key elements was that as part of that project, they were to study conflict and peace, and they studied the impact of World War II on Coventry and Hiroshima. Part of their intercultural learning was not only the arts, but actually learning about the history and culture of another country. we took Hiroshima. It's also now an international city of peace like Coventry. And there was a virtual session, as we have just heard from Keiko. She spoke to the children of Coventry from Hiroshima. As I said, they learned about another cultural art form, Noh Theatre, 650-year-old theatre art form. And 2 workshops were organised for the children by the Between the Stones team. They were able to work with at least a couple of our actors. One of them was a very well-known professional Noh actor, Kinoe Oshima, from the Oshima Noh Theatre. By coincidence, she actually comes from Hiroshima Prefecture, and her family has a theatre there. We also included our mask maker, who came on another occasion, Kitazawa Hideta, and the whole of this project was with the support of the Japan Society, as well as many others. But the Japan Society actually worked with us from the beginning, and they ran a couple of workshops, including a mask making workshop that the children participated in. And this is a picture of the children learning the shiori. This is a symbolic gesture of sorrow, where you're catching your tears. And that was one of the introductory days that we ran. Here is, you can see Kinoe up there, our mask maker, Kitazawa-san, and also one of the children making her masks. And then finally, they created their own travel songs and a short Noh influence play about conflict, peace, and reconciliation. And examples were performed publicly at Coventry Cathedral once as part of the 2019 Hiroshima Day. And it was the first time that, although they have this day every year in Coventry Cathedral, they mark the Hiroshima Day. It was the first time that children had participated in that event. And this is one of the children delivering her work. And the second occasion was as part of the Coventry City of Culture's Japan Arts Festival, the one that I mentioned earlier. And several children participated again at Coventry Cathedral later in 2021. And finally, of the 3 projects, the Coventry Young Ambassadors Japanese Peace Garden. Originally, we thought we would just perhaps work on desktop designs of gardens with the children. But I spent a day working with a group of children from a number of schools. And we said, what if we were to design a full-size garden? What would we include in it? And the children together came up with many, many ideas for this that are very poignant and very moving. And I think if you listen this afternoon to Rebecca's account, she's going to go through a lot more of this. So I will just pick up some of the key things. The children created a beautiful, mindful space. Kari-sensei gardens, you can go and be at peace with yourself, with the world. And it was very much something that the children thought about right from the beginning when we started thinking about the design of the garden. So the children were involved from idea to reality, not just in the design and the planning, but also in the delivery, including finally the opening ceremony that the Mayor of Coventry and the Japanese ambassador came and opened the garden as part of this Coventry City of Culture activity and the Japanese Arts Festival. The garden, when you read about the garden, you'll find that it supports all of the UNESCO action areas. It also benefits communities both locally and we hope internationally. And it was supported by many collaborators, including the Japanese Garden Society in the UK, who actually did the construction together with various construction company workers and companies that supported the garden, and many funding partners. And Rebecca's going to tell you a lot more about all of the partners involved, because she was in fact the linchpin for keeping the whole project together and on track, and indeed delivered. Lots of people gave their time, but I think all of these collaborators really participated in this project because of the children's involvement. It therefore turned out to be a transformative project for all of us, not just for the children who followed the whole project through from beginning to end, but all those involved. And that would not have been possible without Rebecca's effective local leadership and management. So here's one picture of the garden. She's going to show you lots more this afternoon. And also you can see just how literally stuck in the children got when they were involved. And the workers were so engaging in helping the children understand all those processes. There's a little book, you can find that on the website, all about those projects. And we are hoping that the pilot projects will provide a number of generic points that may be useful to others, perhaps in lots of different ways, as part of this UNESCO Arts and Culture for Peace initiative. And here's just a few additional thoughts. We were reminded, Rebecca and I thought about this, and we know lots of other people have too, that young people have a very good understanding and can synthesize effectively humanitarian concepts such as the need for peace, reconciliation, and sustainability. They have a great capacity to accept and learn from other cultures very different from their own. And they're also keen to keep an open mind and positively seek out opportunities and additional benefits wherever they find them, or whether they can be created along the way. And finally, they do appreciate projects that can work on a number of levels to add value and benefit. And that this was not only possible during the way that these projects evolved, but it became critically important. So with that, I'm going to move on now to the initiative. Why the 3 UNESCO ASPnet action areas are important to everybody. Julie's already taken us through these, but it is now vital, clearly vital for the world to tackle probably the 3 of the greatest challenges facing humanity. The UNESCO action areas are not only vital, they're interrelated and they're urgent for everybody. But without peace, and it's one of the reasons we've called this the 4 Peace Initiative, without peace, we cannot achieve sustainability. And without having a tolerant relationship between cultures, we will not have peace. Without peace, all of our human rights are at risk. So we believe that art has the potential to provide a creative mirror through which we can reflect on our impact on society. And that's why we're hoping that the Arts and Culture for Peace initiative will encourage action that supports the action areas and at the same time will benefit every individual child involved as well as our wider communities. We're hoping, I'm going to put all 3 up, that your school or your educational establishment could develop any of the following transformative arts and culture for peace projects for the benefits that we've just discussed. If it's the eForest for Peace initiative that you're interested in, and you can sort of see where the roots from the Coventry work came from, but here we want to broaden it out. And I think all the speakers prior to me have actually given you ample good reason for considering this on any level you wish. To develop artistically dynamic peace trees. Now, these could be real or imagined, that involve the creation of peace poems or peace images that highlight the importance of living in peace with ourselves, our communities, and our planet. I say real or imagined because if you want to take this project into your community and your community happens to have local projects that are, for example, planting trees, which we know is going on so many places all around the world, then why not join your project with one of those sorts of projects and add value to any project that is going on. This is all about connecting for peace, connect to as many projects, people, organizations as you can to highlight the importance of living in peace with ourselves and our communities, and of course our planet. In the performing arts for peace, it's an opportunity for young people to develop and perform their own stories, plays and songs that reflect our global citizenship and cultural diversity and the challenges of ensuring a more peaceful world. And finally, for the Gardens for Peace, This is, again, an opportunity to create peace gardens that can support the well-being of others, as you could see in the Karisansui Garden. It is such a place, as well as convey the critical and urgent importance of living more peacefully and sustainably with nature, ourselves and our planet. And with this one, if you want to think outside of the box of a brand new garden, which you could think about if you want to, you could also consider if there are land development projects going on in your area, why not have a children's garden as part of those developments? You see them going on all the time, developments that are needed, perhaps following conflict, perhaps for the redevelopment or renovation of areas. Why not build your project into those kind of opportunities that may exist already? And finally, whatever you come up with, we're hoping that these outcomes can be shared internationally through the UNESCO Paris and other networks. How can you participate? Well, it's open to pre-primary, primary, secondary, technical and vocational education in formal, non-formal settings, and teacher training. That sounds like everybody. And I heard from our Japanese colleagues the other day that they also want to involve university professors who could work with schools on their projects. So I don't think this project will exclude anybody really, but the primary group who can take the lead are really the children. So what would they do? They would work flexibly. They could work on 1, 2, 3, or perhaps one project that combines all of these. There's a great deal of flexibility built into the initiative. Schools, we do ask them to begin their own study of conflict and peace. We've heard from the other speakers how important it is to learn from history and not to repeat the same mistakes. And in realizing their ideas, we are asking young people to learn about and use a less is more creative and philosophical approach, both to reflect the spirit of sustainability, but also to see how this will work not just in a Japanese culture, but it's an artistic, shall we say, development that can go across many different cultures. And it would be very interesting to see children's work. I think it is important that it also offers a notion of accessibility to schools. This isn't about you're a school that has lots of resources or a school that doesn't have any resources. It's about an initiative that should be open to all schools of any kind. Who can you work with? Well, you could just work within your school, within your educational establishment and develop a new project if you wish, if you've got great ideas for that. Or as I've been saying all along, you can join a project and add further value to existing work. And you can collaborate with other artists and other partners as we have done across the 3 projects. And what are we hoping for? With what effect? What are going to be the benefits? You should look to your projects benefiting your local communities, as well as when you share them internationally, the international communities. But most importantly, they should represent the ASPnet action areas. So next steps. I think we should say, where are we now? If you are a school, ask yourselves, are we starting a completely new project? Or is this going to build on a local initiative and add value? Where are you going? Think about which of the action areas will be your main focus. Where is your central activity going to be? And who is going to benefit from what you achieve? How will you get there? Well, you consider the conflict and peace study, consider how you can apply the less is more approach, and consider all of the inputs, the resources, human and physical, that you will need, the processes, how you're going to do it, the outputs, what will come out of it, and the benefits, the outcomes. And finally, how will we know if we've been successful? Well, given your shared vision, your success criteria should really demonstrate what impact and benefit you wish for your individual students and your wider communities. Hopefully that will bring you to a new current position. We can talk a lot more about these sorts of things at other times. The initiative will be reviewed each year. We've said initially perhaps it could run for 3 years if there's a great deal of interest. And we should be saying to ourselves, where are we now? We're starting with the Coventry pilot projects, things that you can learn from. We've asked you to focus on the benefits for other regions and countries and collectively give voice to children so that their voices can add to the action areas and give it greater international volume, depth, and meaning. And how will we get there? Well, find your local person. I do believe that galvanizing others is really important. And finally, we would also look at the success criteria that the national coordinators believe are possible in your area. To finish, we hope that this opportunity will demonstrate that peace can prove to be stronger than conflict and division, to illustrate that from mighty oak trees, mighty oak trees do grow. That the individual creative elements of every student will together help us work as global citizens more effectively. And I think I've come to the end of my time, so I perhaps just leave you with the last one, which is to give voice to the children. The future belongs to them. Their ideas about how these action areas can be strengthened do matter and can support the international community effectively by creating opportunities from all of the challenges which lay ahead. So we welcome your questions. We hope you're going to learn lots today and that you'll put all of your good work to use and join the UNESCO Arts and Culture for Initiative. Wherever you are in the world, you're all welcome. We value all contributions. And with that, I think we can declare the initiative officially launched.
Thank you very much, Jannette. That was a really interesting and informative presentation. We've actually run out of time for questions. We've slightly overrun, but we have got a couple of messages in the chat. James Bridge has said that the peace trees fit beautifully with the image of the tree roots and fruit of UNESCO. And could schools also relate this work to the Sustainable Development Goals, for example, SDG 16, peace and justice? And quite a lot of people have said that that's a really good idea. We've got people from the Gambia and from the UK who've said that very inspiring ideas and that they'd like to develop something. So yes, we've had quite a lot of interest. It's unfortunate that we haven't got time for questions because we have to introduce the next speaker. However, there will be an opportunity to look at this again this afternoon when Rebecca Bollins talks about how it happened in practice in Coventry, and we'll be able to hopefully get some questions later on. Do put questions in the chat and I will try and send you some information about the initiative and how you can get started, links, etc. to the website. So thank you very much, Jannette, for that presentation and the launch of...
Forgive me for running over a little bit. I am looking at the questions and people's comments, and I will read them all. And thank you all very much indeed. It looks as if we will be sharing the presentation. Everybody's been asking, can we share the presentation? And yes, of course, we will do so. And we should say, Anne, that actually people can ask questions of you and me. I'll act as an advisor for the initiative after the conference and engage with groups that are interested to join. We'd love to hear your ideas and discuss those with you.
Yes, definitely. We'll put some links in the chat so that people can connect. Thank you very much, Jannette.